Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Hannah. This is Jar of Fireflies, and here I make videos all about my life as an Orthodox Jewish homeschooling mother of 3. And today it's story time. I'm going to be taking you through a Shabbat. All right, I get so many questions about Shabbat, and because I cannot film on Shabbat or even have somebody else come in and film me, what I can do is have a little story time and tell you all about Shabbat. So it is Saturday night right now as I am filming this, so Shabbat has just ended, and I'm just gonna walk you through. We're gonna have a little story time, and I'm just gonna tell you all about how this particular random Shabbat went for us. Okay, so jumping back to last night, Shabbat starts 18 minutes before sunset on Friday nights. So yes, there is an app on my phone that I use to tell me when it is going to be the time to light my candles for Shabbat. So once that time rolled around, actually it was, I think I lit maybe a couple of minutes early last night. I try to light a few minutes early if I can, and then I'm taking in Shabbat a few minutes early. What I mean by that is taking on the obligations of Shabbat. So anyways, I lit my candles there a couple of minutes before Shabbat started, and at that point my husband had already gone to services. So he was there doing the services at our synagogue, and I was home with the kids. So I lit my candles there, and then Shabbat began for us. So when I light candles, my kids like to hang out there with me. They want to say amen to the bracha, the blessing that I make when I light my candles, and they're just very excited to say Shabbat Shalom and get back on with their business. But they do really enjoy it. It means a lot to them to be there when I light my candles. So after I lit the candles and they said their amen and we were all done with that, the kids ran off to play and just continued what they were doing before I was lighting candles. So at that point, I went into the kitchen and I made sure that things were all kind of set up and ready to go. I checked what time it was and tried to consider like when my husband was going to be coming home, and should I start pulling things out and getting things on the table yet, or kind of what to do there. And I did end up going ahead and pulling the salads out of the refrigerator and just setting them on the counter there. Now, I knew I still had some time before my husband would be done with services and come home, and the kids were very entertained playing with each other. So I grabbed a book and just kind of hung out and had a little quiet time for myself here in this room, in my comfy chair over here in the corner. I was flipping back and forth between a magazine and a book that I am reading, so just kind of enjoying a little bit of relaxing time. So then I came out a little bit later and put some salads into small bowls and started putting them on the table for us to enjoy with our meal, and just at that point was just waiting for my husband to come home. So when he did come home, he told me that we were probably going to have a guest for our meal. Now, we had planned on not having any guests. We just didn't invite anybody. We don't normally invite people on Friday nights. We sometimes will have guests on Friday nights, but it's in the summer in particular when Shabbat starts so late, it can be a little hard to have guests over. I think Shabbat started about 7:45 last night. So then by the time my husband's getting home and by the time we're sitting down to eat, like it's probably like 9 o'clock or something. I don't know. I didn't really look at the clock so much at that point. But anyway, so he told me somebody was probably coming to a meal, and it's somebody that we host a lot. It's a good friend of ours. So I was very excited that he was going to be coming, and my kids were super excited that this guest was going to be there. So I set another place on the table, and that was great. So we were waiting for our guest to come because he did not come directly with my husband. But while we were waiting, my husband just finished putting together a few more salads, and we were all really hungry. So I had snacked a little bit before Shabbat started, but I was trying to wait for the meal, and yeah, I was hungry. We were all hungry. But then our guest came. I heard the knock at the door. When I opened the door, my guest came in along with another guest. So we ended up with someone else who I had no idea was coming, which was still fantastic. So I set another place at the table for our second guest. Now, our second guest is another person that we do host regularly, so I was very happy that he was able to attend as well, and these two guys are very good friends. I think they live next door to each other, so it was very fun to have them both at our meal, and that ended up making our meal much later than normal. I want to say our meal ended about 10:30 last night. I don't tend to look at the clock a whole lot on Shabbat, but I think I remember someone asking someone what time it was, and we said 10:30. Somebody else then was like, oh, we should bench or whatever. So benching is when we make the blessing after the meal. There's a whole long blessing that we make. It takes a few minutes to say, and that's what we say after we finish our meal. So anyways, for the meal, I should back up here. For the meal, we had our salads and the challah, and then we had the Moroccan fish. I didn't have a dessert planned because I hadn't planned on having guests come over, But my husband came home from services with a bag of popcorn that one of his friends gave him. This friend of his always makes popcorn for Shabbat, and my husband loves his popcorn. So he very thoughtfully made a bag of popcorn and gave it to my husband. So we ended up eating that for dessert along with just some candy that we had in the pantry, and everybody was very happy. During the meal, the conversation ranged from kind of how was your week, sort of general, that sort of thing, to discussing the Parsha, the kids showing off their Parsha paintings that they had done and talking a little bit about the Parsha. The Parsha is the weekly Torah portion. Each week we read a little bit more of the Torah so that each year we end up reading the entire Torah. Okay, there were some other just general like Divrei Torah, words of Torah that we spoke at the meal. And like I said, just general conversation about the week, world events, things like that. Okay, so after the meal was over and everybody had benched, and we said that after blessing, then our guests were ready to go home. So we walked our guests outside. Now this is very customary on Shabbat. Really, we like to do it anytime, but particularly on Shabbat, we like to walk our guests outside, just escort our guests out. So we did that. We said our goodbyes, enjoyed the beautiful weather outside. It was a beautiful evening. And then we came back inside. So at this point, the kids went to bed. My daughter had already left at some point and went to sleep. So it was just the boys that needed to go to bed. And my husband started taking care of that while I started getting the kitchen cleaned up. So I definitely had some dishes to wash because we needed the dishes again for lunch the next day. And I knew I need probably a little bit of the silverware to get us through the rest of Shabbat, but probably not all of it. And I just kind of wanted to at least get dishes stacked up and things like that, or put some things in the dishwasher, just whatever I could do to kind of make things a little bit easier for me and not have everything out, because I don't like having just piles of dishes everywhere. So after my husband finished getting the kids to bed, he sat down at the dining room table and brought out some of his books. He had to work on practicing laning the Parsha, so reading that Torah portion at services the next day. That is what he does at our synagogue during our services. So he had to practice that. He knows it, he does it all the time, but he has to practice it. That's his thing. I love it. I love to hear it. So I was hearing him do that while I was finishing up doing the dishes and getting the kitchen as cleaned up as I could. I also grabbed the broom and ran that around real quick, just sweeping up under the, the breadcrumbs everywhere from the challah. Kids at a meal, what do you expect? So sweeping up under the table and, just getting everything, like I said, as straightened up as I could. Took the plastic off of our tablecloth, threw that away, and I didn't do anything else to start setting up for the next day. I could, if I wanted to, I could have gone ahead and set the table there at night, but gosh, y'all, I was tired. So at this point, it's probably after 11 again. I did not look at the clock. It had to have been after 11 o'clock. I was very tired. The kids were asleep and I went ahead and went into bed. My husband stayed up a little bit later with his books, doing his learning. That was great, but yeah, me, bed. Now, before I fell asleep, I did read just a little bit of the book that I'm reading. I struggled to keep my eyes open for one whole chapter of this. A book that I like to read before I go to bed. It's a cozy murder mystery I'm reading right now by Julie Heisey. It's her Manor House series. I'm on book 2. So that's a fun little series and I'm enjoying that. It's kind of my light reading. Okay, so now we're on Saturday morning. I woke up not until about 8 a.m., which for me is crazy late sleeping in. I'm an early riser. But I guess going to bed that late, yeah, I did not wake up early. And I usually don't wake up too early on Shabbat, probably because we do stay up later on Friday nights. But anyways, I woke up about, I think it was 8 a.m. on the nose because I grabbed my phone to check my son's blood sugar as soon as I woke up, which is what I always do. Happened to see the time because it was there on the screen when I picked up my phone. So to answer a question, I've gotten this question from a few people: how do we handle my son's diabetes on Shabbat? And the answer is we do it completely the way that we do the rest of the week. I'm allowed to look at my phone to read his blood sugar, which is great because he's not always right next to me. And I'm allowed to, of course, use his phone to look at his blood sugar. And I'm also allowed to use his PDM, which is another electronic device, so that I can give him his insulin. I can also check his blood sugar, which is drawing blood, which normally is not allowed on Shabbat. But again, this is considered saving a life. We call it pikuach nefesh in Hebrew. And that is all completely permissible and totally fine. I can do whatever my son needs on Shabbat to keep him healthy because it's all considered saving a life. I definitely wish that I could just totally put the phone down on Shabbat and totally ignore it. But I also know that it's the best care that I can give my son. So It's fine. I set up my phone before Shabbat so that once my phone opens up, the app there with his blood sugar already opened. So I don't even have to see anything else or touch anything else that I don't need to touch. And it's just right there. So keeping it as simple as I can. And as much as, yeah, I would love that break from the phone, got to keep my kiddos safe. Okay. So I woke up at 8 a.m. because I heard the pitter patter of little feet running down the hallway, and these little feet came into my room, saw that I was sleeping, and turned around and went away because my husband was already up. He was back in the dining room working on some of his learning and getting started on his davening there in the dining room. So my son went out there. It was my littlest son. So he went out there when he saw that I was asleep and went to be with my husband. Of course, this woke me up though, and that was fine. When I saw that it was 8 o'clock, I was like, oh my gosh, I better get out of bed. So at that point, I just got out of bed, got dressed and everything, and went out to help the kids get their breakfast together and things like that. So the kids had some cereal for breakfast. They really enjoy having sort of a special cereal. So we usually get some sort of chocolate cereal. So we got chocolate checks and some kind of, I think it was peanut butter and chocolate Cheerios or something like that. I don't know. They absolutely loved it. So that's all that matters. So while the kids were eating breakfast, it became time for my husband to go to shul. So I walked him out to the sidewalk because I just enjoy walking him out. And then I came back in and was with the kids. So my husband always goes to services unless he's sick or something like that. I don't always go to services. I was asked the question, how often do women and children go to services? And I have to say that completely depends on the family. Some women I know never go. I just don't ever see them unless there's some big special occasion that they want to attend for. And then other women are there all the time, the entire time. So it just completely varies. And kids are the same way because they're just coming with their parents or whatever. For me personally, I would so much rather just stay home the whole time, but I know my kids really enjoy going and getting to play with other kids. So I went in the big debate in my head all week long, am I gonna go to services? Am I not gonna go to services? And it was gonna be a game day decision. Okay, so as my kids were finishing up breakfast and going off and playing and things like that, I started on working on things around the kitchen, just cleaning up from breakfast, and then I started getting the table ready for lunch. We were having guests for lunch, this I knew. I knew that we were having a family over and my next door neighbor, and then one of the guys from the night before, we realized he did not have lunch planned, so we invited him to come to lunch with us, and he gladly accepted, so he was going to be coming as well. So we were gonna have, 6 guests total, though 2 of them were small children, but they still need a place at the table. So I was setting the table for 11 and I was getting the food ready to put on the hot plate. So all the dishes that I made going into Shabbat, I made a potato kugel, a broccoli kugel, and an apple kugel. So I pulled all of those out and put them on the counter because they had saran wrap on top of them, the plastic wrap, and I knew that I needed to put foil on top of those before I put them on the hot plate. I just don't know if the saran wrap's gonna hold up on the hot plate. It just doesn't seem like that'd be a good idea. So anyways, the kids asked me if we were going to go to services. I asked them if they wanted to go. They said they wanted to go. So I said, okay, go start getting ready. So they started getting ready. They just needed to change into clothes that were appropriate to wear to services for Shabbat and not the clothes that they were sleeping in. So that involved a nice button-down shirts for the boys, some nice pants or shorts in my younger son's case, and then my daughter changed into a nice dress. So while they were working on that and their shoes and socks and all of that stuff, I was finishing up all of the things that I was doing in the kitchen, last minute things there on the table. I made some lemonade, I put that into the refrigerator so it would be cool, and got a jug of water ready. And then I went in to get myself ready after I had finished helping my kids with anything that they needed me to help them with, my youngest son needed help with his shoes and things like that. So once they were all taken care of, I went back into my room and I got myself ready. So I put on one of my wigs, got on my stockings and shoes and everything, and I was ready to go. So once everybody was ready to go, I went ahead at that point and I put the food onto the hot plate and we were ready to go. Okay, so we went out the door, and I realized at that point, after we got just a little bit down the street, that I had left my siddur, my prayer book, at home. So I was like, oh, we gotta go back. So I went back and I got my siddur. Okay, because maybe you noticed, maybe you didn't, there wasn't any davening in my morning so far. I was pretty busy with the kids from the moment that I woke up. Because I didn't wake up early, I didn't have that quiet time without them. And kind of also in the back of my head was, well, okay, if we're going to services, then I will have time to pray there. But I definitely wanted my book. They don't have my exact siddur at shul, at the synagogue, and so I wanted to make sure that I had mine because I like to pray my way. Okay, so we got that and then we continued on our way. A few hellos to some neighbors that were out working on their lawns and things, and we got to services. Okay, now childcare is back in session, the groups they have for the kids. So those were off for the summer, and they were actually off, I think, all last year because of COVID, but they started up again this week, I think. So I happily dropped the kids off at the children's center and could just walk into the main sanctuary and know that my kids were fine and I could pray in peace. So that was very nice. So I did all of my morning davening then there at the synagogue. When I was finished with what I needed to pray, I went ahead and went back out, put my prayer book into the stroller so that I would not forget it. And at this point, I see a few of my friends, so I'm chatting with them a little bit, and pretty quickly the kids came back there from the groups and my husband came out. Shul was over, services were over, and the groups were over, and it was getting ready to time to do kiddish. Okay, so after we finish our services, which by the way on Shabbat morning are about 2.5 hours long. Again, this is for the guys. What I did was only about 20 minutes, but for the guys, it's about 2.5 hours long. So they did that, and yeah, I just did my little 20-minute thing. But anyhow, so once they were finished, we come in to our social hall and we do a kiddish. So when I say that we are having a kiddish, what that means is that the rabbi will say the kiddish blessing that we are all obligated to hear. And then we all just have, there's like some little snacks and things like that, and we can just partake or not. But it's a little social time. There's like a little nosh, a little food, and that's pretty much it. So food that we had, there were some cookies, there were some fruit, things like that, and there were also 2 cholents, which are the overnight stew that is very typical to have on Shabbat. Now, we have not made cholent in a long time, so next time I make it, I will make it into a video for you guys and you can see how I make it, so if you want to try it at home. But anyways, it was fun to have a little bit of cholent there at shul, and the kids enjoyed all the cookies and things like that, and I enjoyed being able to see my friends, and of course my husband his, and my kids theirs. So it was a great little social time. We were probably there for maybe about 30 minutes, I guess. I'm not totally sure. I ended up leaving a little bit earlier because I wanted to go home and start putting salads into bowls on the table, get the lemonade out of the fridge, put that on the table, just kind of start some of those little getting ready things so that when our guests came to our house, none of us would have to wait so long to start eating. So I took my youngest and we went home. And so that was fun to have a little special time with my youngest. We were chatting as we were walking home, and then we were hanging out in the kitchen while I was getting things ready. And he was being my little helper in the kitchen also. He would, I'd hand him a container and be like, okay, take the lid off of that one. So he'd pull the lid off and he'd hand it to me, and he'd give me a little bowl that I had set out in the spoon. And then when I was done, I'd give it back. He'd put the lid back on. It was really cute. It was so fun. I love spending time with him. Okay, so before long, our guests all came over and we were all just kind of hanging out a little bit while we finished with some more of the preparations. My husband had a few other salads that he wanted to make right before we were eating, and we were checking on the food and stuff, making sure we liked the temperature of everything. And for the most part, everything was fine, except that, so like one of my chalot that I had put on the hot plate got nice and warm, and the other one like not so much. So I was kind of like, okay, but maybe we'll try to give it a little bit more time, stick it on a different place on the hot plate or something, but it all worked out fine in the end. Nobody complained, so it's all good. So anyways, once we were ready to sit down and have the meal, we all sat down. I kind of knew where I wanted everybody to sit. It's pretty typical that I wouldn't put like a man next to a woman who they're not like married to. So I kind of had a seating arrangement in my head going into it where I wanted everybody to sit, so there wouldn't be any awkward, oh, maybe we should switch or something like that, because it wasn't working out with the seating chart, if that makes sense. So I just kind of told everybody, oh, you're here and you're here, and it worked out great. So then to start our meal, which, I should have said this last night too. We started our meal the night before and here at lunch, both with my husband saying kiddish. So we end up hearing kiddish a bunch over Shabbat, which is great. So he does the blessing over the wine, and then we all drink a little wine if we choose to. You don't have to. The obligation is to hear it, not to actually drink. Now for my husband, because he was saying it, he did need to drink. Anyways. So once he finished with that, we all went into the kitchen to wash our hands before the meal. So we do our hand washing with that 2-handled cup that y'all see me in a lot of my vlogs there in the morning using. Only we do 3 times on one hand and 3 times on the other instead of alternating back and forth. Our Ashkenaz guests who were with us did 2 on one hand and 2 on the other instead of 3 like we do. So just a little bitty difference between us all. And then we all came back to the table. Now, once you've washed your hands, you can't talk. So this is where things start to get pretty quiet. Okay, so we don't talk until we eat the bread. So my husband sits down and he says the blessing over the bread. And then he cuts the bread and passes it out. He passes a piece to me first because I'm his wife. And then he passes one to everyone else. So we put our bread into like a little basket, a little tray, and that gets passed around so everybody can have some bread. Now, once you have had bread, you are able to then talk again. So it was actually kind of funny because while we were about to wash our hands, I was chatting with one of my guests and we were kind of in this conversation, and then I washed hands and she's still talking, but I'm like, oh, I want to respond to this. I want to say something. So I couldn't. So as soon as I finished my bread, then I turned to her and I started continuing our conversation, and she hadn't had her bread yet, so she could not respond. And I was like, yeah, you're just going to listen to me right now. And then she had her bread and we continued our conversation, but typical Jewish problems there. So yeah, that whole scenario with the kiddish and then the washing of the hands and the eating the bread, that all happens on Friday night as well. So just to clarify. On Friday nights also, in between the kiddish and the hand washing, we give our children a special blessing. Each child individually gets a special blessing from both my husband and from myself. And that's really common in Orthodox Jewish homes. So sorry, I left that part out too. It's late, I'm tired. It's been a long day, a long but fun day. But yeah, sorry about that. Okay, back to it. So lunch was absolutely lovely. Lunch probably went on until about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. But it was just, there was so much great conversation. The kids were having so much fun playing. We were enjoying getting to visit with our guests. And, of course the food keeps coming because there's several courses really, because we start again with the bread and the salads. And then after we've all had our fill of that, then we bring out the main course, which is those 3 side dishes that I had mentioned earlier, as well as what my husband made, which was his roast with the vegetables. So that's kind of becoming his standard thing here lately, and it's delicious. I am not complaining at all. So we all enjoyed that. And then once that was done, then I brought out some chocolate chip cookies that I had made, and we were all able to enjoy those as well. So once the meal finally was over, we again said the benching, the blessing after we eat our meal, and then it was time for our guests to go. So we again walked our guests out, said goodbye, and that was it. Now, one of our guests, I had mentioned that my next door neighbor had come to the meal. So she ended up taking my kids over to her house to play so that I could clean my house in peace and quiet, which was absolutely lovely. So my kids were so excited. They absolutely love our next door neighbor. So they went next door over to her house and they were just playing in her backyard and things like that. So that was, she asked if she could give them popsicles. I was like, oh, of course. So they had so much fun over there, believe me. And yeah, I cleaned my kitchen. So during this time, my husband he was doing some more learning there at the dining room table. And so I was kind of cleaning around him. Again, I swept the floor, I cleared the table, I took the plastic tablecloth off. And then in the kitchen, I washed any dishes that I knew that I would be needing. And then I kind of stacked any dishes that I didn't need that I would be cleaning after Shabbat, kind of in the sink or right next to it, just to kind of get things a little bit more organized looking and kind of out of the way. And again, I could also load things into the dishwasher that would fit. The dishwasher was totally full at this point while I'm cleaning up. Oh, and right before I started cleaning also at that point, the wig came off and this came on. So this is my comfy snood here that I love. I don't change out of my Shabbat clothes. I kept this dress on the whole time. I do have aprons that I can put on. So yeah, I'm not worried about that. So once I finished cleaning the kitchen, I walked over to my next door neighbor's house to hang out with her while the kids were playing. And we ended up staying over there for a couple of hours, just chatting and watching the kids play. It was so much fun. It was really, really nice. She is probably about like my mom's age. It was just really nice. I loved sharing our stories and just getting to know each other even better, and where she loved having the kids there. And it's just, oh gosh, it was just so much fun. When my husband went to go to the evening services, he popped in just to let me know that he was leaving and bring me a key to our house, and then he left. So we hung out still with our next door neighbor for about another hour after that. while he was at services. And then once it was probably about 7 o'clock, I was like, okay, kids, we got to clean up and go home, because I wanted to make sure that I got everything ready for third meal. Okay, now the evening services are only about 20 minutes long, except my husband goes early because he learns with a partner. It's his havruta, his learning partner, and then he does the services there, the afternoon service. So the afternoon service is about 20 minutes long. So anyway, so we left our neighbor's house probably about 7, and we came back over to my house, and I started getting things ready for the third meal. So that involves setting the table again and bringing the salads back out again and all of that. So it's a little bit more casual for us for third meal. I end up using plates that I can put into the dishwasher that don't need to be hand washed or anything like that. So I pull those out, I set the table with those. I still did use cloth napkins and real cups and things like that, and real silverware. You know, it's all real dishes. I don't like to use disposables, but it tends to be more casual stuff. And I only filled up like 1 water pitcher. I didn't make a lemonade also. And I don't put my salads into special containers for third meal. I just pull the actual container that we have been storing them in the refrigerator, take the lid off and stick a spoon in and put that on the table. So yeah, a little bit more casual for the third meal. My husband had already put the fish onto the hot plate so that could heat up a little bit before we sat down for third meal. He did that before he left for services, and I just added the bread there to the food warmer, to the hot plate once I got home and started getting things set up. But that's pretty simple. For the third meal, it's pretty much like our Friday night meal. It's just whatever salads we've got left, any side dishes that we had left. I had a little bit of my side dishes left, so I put those on also, and then the fish, the Moroccan fish. Okay, so probably around 8 o'clock, my husband came home from services, and he brought with him our same 2 guests from Friday night, and they join us pretty much every third meal, so I was completely expecting them. So they came and we enjoyed a lovely third meal. Third meal tends to be pretty short because the guys do have to get back to services when Shabbat is over for the evening service. So right around the time Shabbat is ending, maybe about 10 minutes before, they all leave and they go back to services. The evening service is about 25 minutes long. So I've got about 30 minutes in there while I'm waiting for them to come back. So I wait until Shabbat is over, and then I start clearing the table and getting things all cleaned up. I'll run the vacuum around real quick, get all those crumbs off the floor. I don't have to sweep anymore because Shabbat is over, and I can just kind of get everything situated and back to normal cleaning things so that when my husband comes home, we can just do Havdalah and get on with our evening. Now, I have done a video of what happens after Shabbat. It's been a while since I did this video, so I may do another updated one soon, but for now, that one is there, and it gives you a really good glimpse into what happens right after Shabbat. Okay, but gosh, I guess that's about it. All right, so that's it. That is Shabbat. That was my Shabbat this weekend. That's how it went for us. It was a lot of fun. It seems like it just zooms by when it's happening, but it's such a beautiful day of rest. So yeah, it was an absolutely lovely Shabbat. I really enjoyed it. I felt like it was very relaxing. I really loved the connections that I had with people. It was very people-y Shabbat. Like there was people the entire Shabbat, it felt like, which was fine. But being an introvert, I'm definitely looking forward to just sitting cozy in bed tonight with my phone and just kind of checking out for a little bit to decompress. But of course, I really enjoyed sharing all of this with you. If you enjoyed this story time kind of Shabbat vlog, please hit that like button. I would really appreciate it. It helps my channel out a lot, and it helps me know what kinds of videos you guys like to see. But on that note, I will go ahead and close this video since that is the whole Shabbat story now. But before I do, I'll ask that you please hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. I would love to see you here again. All right, I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you in my next upload. But anyways, I tried it. Anyhow, so anyways, yes, I lit my candles. I lit my candles right around outside, and we walked our So anyways, after we finished that, jumping back ahead, after the meal, and we finished the blessing after the meal, So then the kids all went up. Hi.